Let me ask you something. Have you ever prayed so hard your heart hurt? Prayed until tears soaked your pillow and still woke up the next morning like, God, did you even hear me? If that's you, I got something to tell you. Just because he's silent doesn't mean prayer is not some magic lamp you rub hoping a genie shows up. It's not a wish list you scribble down and toss into the sky. Prayer is deeper than that. It's more powerful than that. It's not just asking, it's believing. It's not just speaking, it's declaring. When you pray, you're stepping into the presence of the Almighty and you're saying, I trust you even when I don't see how. Most people treat prayer like a last resort. They'll try everything else. Friends, plans, fixes, hustle, even manipulation, before they finally drop to their knees and say, God, I need you. But prayer isn't meant to be the backup plan. It's supposed to be your foundation. It's supposed to be the place you start before the storm hits, not just during it. Because when you truly believe in prayer, you understand it's not a wish, it's not begging. It's the boldest form of faith there is. See, when you say a prayer, you're not just whispering into the air. You're aligning your life with purpose. You're admitting, I can't control it all. You're releasing your ego, your fear, your timelines. You're saying, even if I don't know what tomorrow holds, I know who holds it. That's not weakness. That's wisdom. That's not desperation. That's discipline. Think about this. When you plant a seed in the ground, you don't come back the next morning mad that there's no fruit. You understand that roots take time. Growth happens underground. The same is true with prayer. Just because you don't see it working doesn't mean it isn't. God is always moving behind the scenes. The moment you pray, something shifts in the atmosphere. Maybe not around you just yet, but definitely within you. Prayer gives you peace when circumstances don't. It gives you hope when evidence is missing. You could be facing the ugliest trial, and prayer will keep you standing. Why? Because it's not about the words you say, it's about the belief behind them. You don't have to sound poetic. You don't need perfect grammar or long speeches. God's not grading your vocabulary. He's checking your heart posture. That's why prayer is so personal. You can't fake your way through it. You can't impress your way into a breakthrough. You can't hustle grace. Prayer forces you to slow down and remember who's really in control. It reminds you that your value doesn't come from what you own, what you drive, or what title you carry. It comes from who you belong to. And here's the part many people miss: prayer doesn't change God. It changes you. God already knows what you need. He knew it before you ever said a word. But when you pray, you're opening yourself to transformation. You're letting go of the need to control everything. You're surrendering your plan for His. You're not trying to convince Him. You're allowing yourself to be aligned with His will. Let's be honest, sometimes what you're praying for isn't what you really need. You may be asking for a certain job, a relationship, a house, an opportunity. But what if God is saying, I got better? What if He's protecting you from something you can't see yet? Prayer helps you let go of the outcome and trust the one writing the story. So many people give up on prayer because they didn't get what they wanted in the moment they wanted it. But prayer isn't Amazon Prime. It's not about convenience. It's about connection. When you treat it like a vending machine, of course you'll be disappointed. But when you treat it like a conversation with your Creator, something powerful happens. You start to see yourself the way He sees you, worthy, covered, chosen. And when you understand that, you'll pray differently. You'll stop begging and start believing. You'll stop panicking and start praising, because now you realize you're not just throwing words into the air. You're speaking life into your future. You're opening the door for supernatural favor. You're planting seeds of destiny that will grow in due season. It's not about how loud you pray. It's about how deep your trust is. Do you believe the words you say? Do you believe God is listening? Do you believe He's working on it even when you can't see it? That's what real prayer is. That's when it becomes more than routine. It becomes relationship. So the next time you get down on your knees, don't just list your problems. Declare your trust. Don't just tell God how big your storm is. Tell the storm how big your God is. Say it with your chest. Say it with your faith. Say it even when your voice shakes. Because prayer isn't a wish, it's a weapon. And when you use it right, you don't just survive the battle, you rise from it. You don't have to shout for God to hear you. You don't need the perfect words. You don't need to perform or put on a front. Sometimes the most powerful prayers are the ones you never speak out loud. The ones that come out in a whisper, in a sigh, and a tear sliding down your cheek while the world sleeps. Sometimes the loudest cry is the one that lives in the quiet corners of your heart. See, there's a misconception out there that you got to be loud, dramatic, or repeat yourself over and over to get God's attention. But that's not how it works. God ain't hard of hearing. You're not calling out to someone who's distant. You're calling on a God who is always present, always near, always tuned into the frequency of your soul, even when you can't find the strength to say a single word. Think about it. Have you ever sat in silence and felt that overwhelming heaviness in your chest? That feeling like something's wrong, something's missing, something's breaking on the inside, but you can't quite put it into words. That's still a prayer. That ache, that's your soul speaking. That anxiety, that grief, that ache in your gut when life feels too heavy, that's a cry for help that God doesn't ignore. We live in a noisy world. Everybody's got something to say. Social media is loud, the news is loud, life is loud. So when we go quiet, we sometimes feel like we're being forgotten. Like if we're not performing, we're not being heard. But the truth is, God moves best in stillness. You don't need to raise your voice when He already hears your heart. You could be driving in your car, tears in your eyes, music turned down low, not saying a word, and He's right there. You could be sitting on your bed, staring at the ceiling, not knowing what to pray for anymore, and He's right there. You could be too tired to kneel, too exhausted to speak, too heartbroken to cry, and He's still right there. His presence is not dependent on your performance. He doesn't show up only when you're polished. He shows up even when you're a mess. Now listen, just because He hears you doesn't mean the answer will be instant. And this is where most people struggle. We live in a world that moves fast. We expect results, fast service, quick fixes. But God doesn't operate on your deadline. He works on your development. Just because you don't hear back doesn't mean He's ignoring you. Sometimes the silence is part of the test, not because God's cruel, but because growth happens in the waiting room. See, when you don't hear anything back, when the silence stretches out, that's when you start learning who you really are. Do you keep trusting even when it feels like nothing's changing? Do you stay faithful even when your prayers feel like they're bouncing off the ceiling? Do you believe He's still good even when life is not? Some of you have been praying for years, for healing, for reconciliation, for a breakthrough, for clarity, for peace, and it feels like nothing's shifting. But let me tell you something, just because God is silent doesn't mean He's still. Silence is not absence. Silence is often strategy. He's positioning things. He's pruning things. He's working in areas you can't see yet. You think nothing's happening, but underneath the surface, everything's moving. Imagine planting a seed. Day after day, it looks like nothing's changing. But deep in that soil, roots are forming. Foundations are being built. And when the time is right, that seed breaks through the surface. But you had to water it. You had to trust the process. That's what prayer is. It's watering the soil. It's trusting that even when it looks quiet, even when it feels dry, God's still working. Some of you think your silent prayers were forgotten. They weren't. You cried on a bathroom floor 5 years ago, and God still remembers. You whispered, "Help me," when nobody else was around, and heaven heard it loud and clear. You laid in bed night after night begging for peace, and even though it took time, that peace found you eventually. That wasn't coincidence. That was God's faithfulness. Don't ever underestimate what heaven hears. You may forget the words you prayed, but God never does. Every prayer, every whisper, every broken is stored up. And sometimes the answer doesn't come in the form you expected. Sometimes the blessing shows up through closed doors. Sometimes protection sounds like no. Sometimes silence is actually grace. Now here's something else to chew on. Sometimes God is silent because you need to be silent. Sometimes we're too busy trying to make things happen ourselves, too busy talking over God, too loud with our own plans, our own voice, our own anxiety. But in the silence, we're forced to be still. And in stillness, we begin to listen. We stop begging and we start trusting. We stop panicking and we start aligning. That's why trusting your silent prayers is really about trusting His heart. You won't always get a sign. You won't always feel goosebumps. You won't always hear thunder from the sky. But you can trust that the God who created you didn't bring you this far to leave you now. You can trust that even if the world goes quiet, His promises never expire. So don't stop praying. Don't stop believing just because you haven't heard a reply. Don't let the silence fool you into thinking nothing's happening. You're not praying to the air, you're praying to the one who breathes life into your very lungs. And if He gave you the strength to pray, He's already prepared the strength to endure. Because every silent prayer is heard, every tear is counted, every moment of surrender is honored. And in due time, in His perfect time, He will answer. Maybe not in the way you pictured, maybe not with the words you hoped, but with a plan that's greater than what you could ask or imagine. So rest in that, walk in that, trust in that. Because silence is not the absence of God. Sometimes it's the setup for something far greater. Waiting is one of the hardest things you'll ever do in life, especially when you've already prayed, already believed, already cried, already done all the right things. You've been faithful, you've trusted, and you've stood strong, but the answer still hasn't come. And in that silence, the enemy creeps in whispering. Maybe it's not coming at all, but I'm here to tell you something that will change how you see everything. A delay is not a denial. See, we live in a culture of now. We want everything instantly, instant delivery, instant success, instant responses. And when God doesn't move on our schedule, we start thinking He's not moving at all. But just because the blessing hasn't shown up yet doesn't mean it's not already in motion. God's timing is different from yours. He's not just preparing the blessing, He's preparing you to carry. If you received everything you asked for when you asked for it, you wouldn't be ready. You might mishandle the opportunity. You might sabotage the relationship. You might blow the open door because your character wasn't strong enough to hold what you were praying for. See, God isn't just interested in giving you something. He's interested in growing you through the process. He doesn't want you to just touch the blessing. He wants you to be trusted with it. That's why delay is necessary. It's the classroom where God shapes your endurance. It's the gym where your faith gets stretched. It's the wilderness where pride dies, distractions fall away, and clarity is born. You may think you're waiting on God, but more often than not, He's waiting on you to grow into the version of yourself that can handle the next level, waiting on you to develop wisdom, waiting on you to trust Him, even when it doesn't make sense. Don't mistake God's patience for forgetfulness. He hasn't forgotten about your dream. He hasn't ignored your prayers. You may have gone quiet, but He's still writing. You may feel stuck, but heaven's blueprint hasn't changed. Just because you don't see the blessing yet doesn't mean the blueprint's been canceled. Sometimes it just takes time for the invisible to become visible. Let me give you an example. You ever order something online and get a tracking number? You know it's on the way. You paid for it. It's been confirmed, but it hasn't hit your doorstep yet. You check the updates. In transit, delayed at facility. Now just because it's delayed, do you cancel the order? Do you assume it's not coming? No. You stay ready. You prepare for its arrival. You clear space. You trust that it's on the way. That's how you've got to trust God. Faith is not proven in the moment you receive. It's proven in the moments you don't see anything happening and you still believe. You still get up and say, God, I know you're working. I know you've got me. I'm not giving up just because it's taking longer than I expected. You stay planted. You stay hopeful. You keep your hands lifted and your heart aligned, because here's another truth: what comes too fast can leave just as fast. But what's built through prayer, through waiting, through tears and trust, that kind of blessing has roots. It won't fall when the wind blows. It won't crumble under pressure. It was built to last. That's why it took longer. That's why it didn't happen overnight, because God was building it right. Think about Joseph in the Bible. He had a dream as a teenager. He knew God had a plan for his life. But what happened? He got thrown in a pit, sold into slavery, falsely accused, locked in prison, and all before the dream ever came true. 13 years went by, 13 years of setbacks, and yet every delay was preparation. Every trial shaped him, every rejection positioned him. And when the blessing finally came, he didn't just survive, he ruled. He was ready. That's what God is doing with you. Your delay is not punishment, it's preparation. It's not rejection, it's redirection. He's growing you into a leader, not just a receiver, into someone who can carry the weight of the blessing without losing yourself. So here's the challenge. Don't let delay break your faith. Let it build it. Keep praying even when there's no update. Keep believing even when the silence gets loud. Keep showing up with a yes in your spirit, because God is never late. He's never confused. He's never winging it. His timing is exact. And when that door finally opens, when that prayer finally gets answered, you'll look back and say, if it had come any earlier, I wouldn't have been ready. But now I can receive it with full hands and a full heart. So hold on. Keep going, stay in position. Because a delay does not mean it's denied. It just means God is still writing a better story than the one you imagined. And when it arrives, it won't feel rushed. It'll feel right, because it'll be right on time. Prayer is powerful, but prayer without movement is just noise. You can't sit still, pray for a breakthrough, and do nothing in the meantime. You have to move your feet while you pray. That's not a contradiction, it's alignment. It means you're not just asking God to make a way, you're also preparing yourself to walk in it when it shows up. Far too many people think prayer is a substitute for action. It's not. Prayer is the fuel for action. When you pray, you're plugging into power. But after you pray, you've got to move like it's already done. If you're praying for a job, update your RA summary. If you're praying for healing, take care of your health. If you're praying for peace, stop inviting chaos into your space. Faith is not passive. It's not lazy. It gets up, gets dressed, and gets moving even when the destination is still unclear. This is where people get stuck. They think that just because they said amen, they're done. But amen is not the end. It's the start. It's your signal to act, to build, to plan, to prepare. See, when you really trust your prayers, your behavior will reflect that belief. You won't wait around twiddling your thumbs. You'll take steps of faith, even if they're small, because every step forward is a declaration. I believe what I prayed for is already in motion. Let's say you're praying for financial stability. That's good, that's needed. But after you say that prayer, you need to start stewarding what you already have. Create a budget. Learn about investing. Cut off unnecessary expenses. Don't ask God to bless what you won't even manage. You want a big blessing. Show you can handle the small one. Because faith without works is dead. Prayer without action is empty. The truth is God gives us gifts, not finished products. He gives us seeds, not trees. That means it's your job to plant, water, and protect what you've been given. You can't pray for harvest and never go outside to the field. That's not faith, that's fantasy. And the difference between fantasy and faith is movement. When you move your feet, you're showing God you're ready. You're telling life, I'm not just hoping, I'm expecting. Think about Noah. God told him a flood was coming and to build an ark. He didn't just sit there and pray for safety. He built that ark, hammered it, measured it, cut the wood, got blisters on his hands, worked every day. That's what faith looks like. He moved his feet while he trusted the promise. He prayed and prepared. And when the rain finally came, he was ready. Now you may not be building an ark, but you're building something. Maybe it's a business, a family, a future, a healed version of yourself. Whatever it is, prayer will give you direction, but movement is what builds the road. God is not going to do for you what you can do for yourself. You've got to participate in your own miracle. You've got to sow the seeds, even if the ground still looks dry. Sometimes people use prayer as a hiding place. I'm just waiting on God, they say. But really they're afraid of failing, afraid of being judged, afraid of taking the first step. So they mask their fear as faith. But listen, God doesn't bless comfort zones. He blesses obedience. You've got to move even when it's uncomfortable. You've got to trust even when the next step looks risky. That's what courage looks like. And don't misunderstand me, movement doesn't always mean giant leaps. Sometimes it's a small decision, as simple as a quiet act of obedience, a new habit, a healthier boundary. But those small steps done in faith build momentum, and momentum creates change, and change leads to growth. You can't stay in the same place and expect a different life. You've got to walk it out. Think about it like this: when you order something online, you don't just sit around hoping it magically appears. You check the tracking, you clean the house, you prepare for its arrival. That's what moving your feet looks like after prayer. You behave like the answer is already on the way, because that's real trust. That's how you show God that you're serious. If you're asking for love, learn how to love yourself first. If you're asking for peace, learn how to stop entertaining drama. If you're praying for a second chance, make sure you've learned from the first mistake. Don't ask for new beginnings while you're still holding on to old habits. Movement means making space, mentally, emotionally, and physically, for what you're believing for. So don't just pray and wait. Pray and prepare. Pray and plan. Pray and act. Because the blessing is not just in the asking, it's in the alignment. When God sees you moving, even when you don't have all the details, He honors that. He shows up in that. He opens doors for people who knock. He promotes those who prepare. He blesses those who believe with their feet, not just with their words. You're not powerless. You're not stuck. You're not forgotten. You just need to start moving in the direction of what you asked for. Because when your prayers and your actions walk hand in hand, there's no limit to what can happen. When you pray for something, it's easy to get caught up in your own timeline. You want it now. You want it fixed, answered, handled yesterday. That's how we think. We live in a fast-paced world that praises speed. But God doesn't move on your clock. He moves on purpose. And that purpose unfolds on His time, not yours. Trusting your prayer doesn't just mean believing it'll be answered. It means trusting the process that leads to that answer. It means staying grounded even when nothing is happening. It means holding on to faith even when the days turn into weeks and the weeks turn into months and you still haven't seen the breakthrough. That's hard, I know. But that's where real trust is built. See, most people don't lose faith because they doubt God can do it. They lose faith because it's taking too long. They think the silence means denial. They think the waiting means rejection. But God's timing is never off. You may not understand it, but that doesn't mean it's wrong. The truth is, He's never late and He's never early. He's always right on time, but it's rarely on your time. Let me break it down. Imagine a child planting a seed. They bury it in the dirt and come back the next day expecting a full-grown tree. When it doesn't happen, they get upset. They think it didn't work. But any farmer will tell you it takes time. The roots come first. The growth happens underneath before it ever shows up above. That's how prayer works. The delay isn't failure, it's development. God uses time to prepare the answer and to prepare you. Maybe the job you're asking for still needs to be created. Maybe the person you're meant to marry is still being shaped into who they need to be. Maybe the healing you've been begging for comes through a process that's still unfolding. You want the promise, but you may not be ready to hold it yet. Timing is protection. Sometimes what you think is a delay is actually mercy. We often say, God, I trust you. But do we trust Him when nothing makes sense? Do we trust Him when He says, not yet? That's where maturity comes in. Because spiritual maturity is knowing the difference between no and not now. And knowing that either way, God is still good, still present, still working. Here's something else we don't talk about enough. You can do everything right and still have to wait. You can pray with faith, live with integrity, serve others, and still feel like you're stuck in a holding pattern. That doesn't mean your prayers aren't working. It means God is weaving something deeper than you can see. He's aligning things, adjusting people, building bridges you didn't even know you'd have to cross. Now here's the test. What do you do while you wait? Because that's what really shows your trust. Do you complain? Do you try to rush the process? Do you take matters into your own hands? Or do you stay grounded in faith, continue doing the right thing, and trust that when the time is right, the door will open? That's real strength. That's real trust. God's timing teaches patience. It humbles your spirit. It breaks your pride. It stretches your capacity. And that's the point. If He gave you everything too quickly, you wouldn't learn how to hold it. The waiting is not wasted. It's working. It's forming you, teaching you how to walk with endurance, not just excitement. Because the promise isn't just about getting something. It's about becoming someone. Think about the people you admire the most, people with character, wisdom, and strength. None of them got there overnight. Their stories are built on seasons of waiting, praying, falling, getting back up, and learning to trust timing over control. That's the real journey. That's where resilience is born. Now, let's be honest, it's frustrating. Watching others succeed while you're still waiting. Seeing people get what you've been praying for and wondering, God, when is it my turn? But don't let comparison steal your trust. You don't know what they went through. You don't know what they'll face next. Their timing isn't your timing. Their lane isn't your lane. Trust that your story is unfolding exactly as it should. So if you're in a season of delay, don't panic. Don't give up. Don't assume it's over. Stand firm in your faith. Keep showing up. Keep believing. Keep doing your part. But most of all, trust the timing. Trust that every second of waiting is positioning you. Trust that what's meant for you will not miss you. Trust that the God who put the prayer in your heart is the same God who's writing the answer. When it finally comes, when the breakthrough shows up, you'll understand why it took so long. You'll look back and thank God He didn't give it to you when you asked. You'll see how the delay was part of the destiny. And you'll know deep down that trusting His timing was the best decision you ever made. Because when it's God's time, you won't have to force it, fake it, or fight for it. It will flow. And you'll realize the wait wasn't punishment. It was preparation for something greater than you imagined. You see, prayer isn't just a ritual. It's a relationship. It's not about twisting God's arm to get what you want. It's about aligning your heart with His purpose, your steps with His path, and your life with His timing. Trusting in your prayers is really trusting in the one who hears them. And even when you don't see change, even when you feel like nothing is moving, He is. You may feel unheard, but heaven has been listening the whole time. You may feel delayed, but you've never been denied. You may feel tired, but that doesn't mean you're finished. Every word you've spoken in faith is still echoing in the ears of a faithful God. So keep praying, keep trusting, keep walking. And while you're waiting, don't just hope, prepare. Because when it shows up, and it will, it's going to be better, stronger, deeper than anything you imagined. That's what happens when you trust in your prayers. Now go live like you believe it's already on the way.